Awesome. Well, thank you to everyone who is able to join today. This is unfortunately, our final webinar in our Data as a Product Demystification series. We have a great kind of collaboration of folks for you today to talk a little bit about bridging the gap and just aligning data strategies. If this is your first time joining a Women in Analytics webinar, I have a couple of things I'm going to get through, and then we will get right into the good stuff. So first things first, our agenda. Again, I'll spend just a few minutes kind of covering Women in Analytics and our partner on this webinar series, Pathfinder Product. We'll get right into the fireside chat. And then if there's time, a couple of closing remarks as well. And then I want to read just kind of this first section verbatim. We put together this series in partnership with Pathfinder Product. We've been working with them very closely on a data as a product survey. We've had some folks in their organization speak at our past events. So we're really excited to be putting this series together. And just to kind of highlight the overview, the concept of treating data as a product has become not just a strategic advantage, but a necessity. Throughout this series, we will cover the fundamental principles of data as a product and explore how organizations can leverage this innovative paradigm to unlock the true potential of their data assets. So in our first one, we went over kind of the 101. The second one, we went kind of through different roles of folks who have a hand in this data as a product concept. And then today, we're really excited to be hosting a fireside chat just around aligning strategies in that aspect. Like I mentioned, this is our last one of this series, but we will be hosting another series starting in 2 weeks. So if you are joining us today, you'll get some information about that as well. And then again, if this is your first time joining a Women in Analytics webinar, I'll just hit very briefly on our organization. The mission of Women in Analytics is to increase visibility to women, non-binary, and gender fluid individuals making an impact in the space. We do that a couple of different ways through our community platform, webinars like this. We host an annual Data Connect conference. We also host a West Coast event as well as and a lot of other things too. So if you're interested in staying in the loop on what we have going on within our community, you can scan this QR code and join. We've got an events calendar and all sorts of things going on there. Throughout the webinar, if you are having any audio or connection issues, I will be monitoring our info at womeninanalytics.com email, so feel free to shoot us a note. And then again, if you're interested in joining us for some future sessions, you can follow us on socials. We've got a newsletter, the community platform from the previous QR code. And yeah, we'll help you stay in the loop on all the great things we have going on. And then lastly, I want to thank Pathfinder Product for supporting the series. Again, we've been partnering with you all for the last since July, really, and it's been a great and fun partnership. So we really appreciate your support of this series. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tammy from Pathfinder Product to just dive a little bit more into what they do. So thanks, Tammy.
Thanks, Kelsey, for kicking us off. So just a little bit about Pathfinder Product. So we exist to help companies find the path to repeatable growth through embracing modern product management practices. We do that through our services with interim product management consulting, as well as product coaching. So we also have deep expertise in the data product management and data as a product space. So if you're interested in finding out more, feel free to reach out directly to me or find us at pathfinderproduct.com. And then lastly, before we jump into the chat, want to share a really exciting announcement. So for those of you that are joining us today, as well as those that have been part of this Data as a Product Demystification series, we've been partnering with Women in Analytics to release an upcoming State of Data as a Product in the Real World research study. So you'll have exclusive access or initial access to the study before it's out more broadly. So we're excited to share that with you. So check your inboxes soon, post-event for that study. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into our fireside chat. So again, in this webinar series on data as a product demystification and data as a product, as we've touched on, it's really about taking a product approach to maximize the value of your data. And one of the things that we've learned as we've explored this space is that in order to optimize data's potential, it's critical that data team members, data leaders, or leaders in the organization are aligned and communicating well in the process. So before we dive in, I thought it would just be helpful to do just a quick round of our name and where we work and our titles, and then I'll jump into the questions and get the conversation going. So again, my name is Tammy Lawlor. I'm the VP of Go-to-Market Strategy at Pathfinder Product, as well as do fractional product management related coaching. So excited to join and facilitate this discussion today. Alicia, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. Thanks, Tammy, for putting this on and for giving us a great introduction to this event. My name is Alicia Kimiagarov. I currently work at a company called Cerrowire. That's actually a recent change. So I was with Collins Aerospace for a couple of years, and then before that, Carrier. Both are within the Raytheon Technologies family, and that's a Fortune 50 company. And now I'm with Cerrowire, which is a considerably smaller company. It's a subsidiary of Berkshire Hathaway, but it's definitely a very different data experience. I'm there as the senior data manager, whereas previously I was a data strategist. So being able to use those experiences and kind of bring that corporate influence into what's now a very high growth company has been very exciting.
Fantastic. All right, KK.
Hey everyone, I'm KK. My name is Kshitija Kulkarni. I go by KK as well. I've been working as a data scientist at Google in the ads and scale platforms team. Recently, I've also joined the AI ops team. Previously, I've been a data analyst, data scientist, business intelligence analyst, all things you can say that people give titles to a data person in the industry. I've worked for 3 Fortune 500 companies in the past, and everything in the operations, product, and data side. So happy to be here and share my knowledge with you.
Fantastic. Thanks, ladies, for introducing yourselves. So let's start with the communication and alignment challenges between data decision makers and dedicated practitioners. So I'm actually going to start with you, Alicia. So as a data leader, how do you perceive the current state of communication between decision makers and data practitioners and organizations?
Yeah, and that's actually a very important question. And from my experience, what I've seen happening in most companies is that there is a lack of communication. So you will see data leaders sort of setting the culture and setting the direction, and sometimes, hopefully, putting in place a strategy. And they just kind of push it out and then wipe their hands and say, okay, now this is our strategy, go do it. Whereas from the data practitioner side, they are trying to figure out how to implement that strategy in their day-to-day work or the tools that they're using. And in some cases, they can't even find the data strategy. This is actually a problem that I faced in the larger corporate area where people were being onboarded and they had no idea where to find anything. So there's room for improvement there for sure. I imagine that KK has some experience. I saw her nodding her head there, but communication is really a very important piece of implementing any strategy that you put in place.
Absolutely. So I'm curious, I'm just diving deeper into that. So what challenges have you personally faced in aligning data as a product strategies across different tiers of your organization? And maybe what are some of the tactics that you've tried to use to overcome that?
Yeah, so when I started out with Carrier, I was actually working as a market analyst specialist. So I was a data practitioner, and I came in and, like I said, there was not a lot of communication around what is our data strategy, how do we implement our day-to-day, and what I ended up doing, and this is something that I saw happening across Collins as well, is I just started kind of making my own data strategy and figuring things out for myself and developing what I needed, the structure that I needed to put in place. And I established my own code of ethics. I established my own reporting, governance. And what this did, it helped me. But as I was progressing in that role, I was getting feedback that it didn't align with the business. And that's really the challenge that practitioners face and that leaders need to focus on. If that communication is not there, if that culture, that data-driven culture isn't in place, then you're going to have practitioners that are kind of flailing and figuring things out for themselves. And you end up not with one data strategy, but with hundreds, depending on the size of your company. And actually, the current challenge that I've in my new role is that there is no data strategy. None. So I get to, which is kind of exciting for me, because I get to come in and I get to develop that based on the needs of the business. But being able to have a structure in place so that the people within your organization understand how data is supposed to be used and what security points are in place and what are the goals of our data. Is it a product? Is it a service? It really is, it comes down to not just the top-down approach, but also the bottom-up approach. Practitioners are eager for this information and they want to be involved in that communication.
Mm-hmm. So much to what you said there, especially even something I know that we've noticed at Pathfinder is that data-driven culture when you're talking about that, because a lot of times we answer and it's like, you know, when you get down to it and figure out even their business strategy, it's like, what's the data behind it? And there isn't strong data or metrics. So that's often even the place that we start. So really interesting there. Let me switch a little bit to the practitioner perspective. So KK gets in on the discussion here. So how do you communicate the value and significance of the work that you're doing to leadership, especially where there could be a gap in technical understanding and bridging that business to technical understanding?
Thanks for asking that question, Tammy. It's a very common problem that we face. And what I've found through practice that works out best for my team is that focusing the whole narrative around business impact. So if we frame the message around business outcomes and not like just focus on jargons or processes, but focus on translating the work into tangible business benefits, such as maybe increased revenue or cost reduction, customer satisfaction, or mitigated risks, it helps us the most when it's that way. Second, I think helps us the most is to quantifying the impact using metrics. So using the data and metrics to demonstrate concrete results and using good visualizations and charts that could simply tell what's the story, right? A headline and a graph that could send a powerful message to the leadership that it's either going really good or bad. So being able to just get to the point and being able to show it using visuals is also something that's helpful to create or show the business impact via data. And third is telling compelling stories. So we know that there is always these technical details, and we can have them in the back pocket if asked. But using stories on how really we work together, what sorts of data we put together, and addressing the specific business challenges and delivering the positive outcomes using a story is something that helps us deliver and show that impact to the leadership.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. Especially when you're talking about the storytelling skill. I mean, whether you're a product manager, a data practitioner, or leader, I mean, that's such an important skill set, as well as being able to focus on those business outcomes or goals to, bridge that gap in communication. So that's great. How do you manage them when there is the inevitable difference of opinion with leadership in priority need or strategic goals?
Alicia, do you want me to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I would love for this to be a conversation of your experience in a larger tech company. I'm curious if it's been different from mine. So in the companies that I've been in, tech and data have been kind of lagging, especially in government-related entities.
Mm-hmm.
So having a data strategy in place and having a lot of those metrics and KPIs just hasn't been there. In fact, I've seen the data strategy in a recent company I was with. I won't name names, but their data strategy consisted of one sentence, and it was embedded in their overarching digital strategy that was created by the IT team. So it was just mind-boggling to me that they were basically having data in the IT sector, but they were telling people go out and go forth and have a data-driven culture. And it's like, well, but we don't have access to the data. We don't have any data governance in place. We don't have anything. So it was really a struggle trying to bridge that gap And I would actually say that there were not just a communication gap between data leaders and the data practitioners, but also with the business side. There's a lack of communication between the people that are implementing these data models, or trying to access the information, and what the business actually needs. And you touched on that you actually are working with metrics and trying to deliver what the business needs. And I have found that to be a rare exception. So that's actually great to hear that there are companies out there that are focusing on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And in my day-to-day practice or in my experience, what I've found very helpful is helping set OKRs from data perspective. So as a data team, we always work with the product team to actually set the OKRs. And how we do that is by opportunity sizing the use cases. So whenever they come to us with, we want to set these goals, we would be like, okay, what do you want to reduce? What's the North Star like? And from there, we help them quantify and set the right targets. And therefore, we form our OKRs. And once the OKRs are set, whenever there are some data strategic initiatives, we help size those initiatives. And from there, we help them prioritize those. So offerings such as these, like OKR setting, impact sizing, opportunity sizing, things like these, when we market these as a product that is offered from the data team, it's very well received. And negotiating with the leadership on why should this be the first thing that we should be working on, or why should this not be included in the roadmap at all. Having such negotiations and conversations really help bring that data as a product strategy in front, and the data team is actually coming forward as a partner rather than something that people use after something's launched. So coming in that collaboration with the product team and leadership, and coming in as equal partners, is something that every data team should really strive for, and always market themselves as partners. And the offering should be marketed, even if it is a one-on-one with the leadership or just a simple hallway conversation. We should always have that in the back pocket when somebody asks what's going on in your team. So I always go with, like, oh, we just launched XYZ, we just ramped up XYZ, and it's having really good early results. So things like these really show that strategic thinking from data practitioners. And it's not only the technical things that we do in our day to day, like writing the SQL code or putting together the pipelines. It's important, but as a data practitioner, it's also important to understand the business goals and the initiatives that are launched, to be able to voice what things we could bring in that could even further enhance those initiatives.
And that's great. It's actually the number one feedback that I've heard, is that data practitioners are either pushing what they think is the best option, or are not, or they're kind of flailing. They're not doing the strategic analysis, right? Those soft skills. They're focusing more on the technical skills, which is important. But if you want those, the leverage with the business decision makers, you really have to understand, well, what are the objectives of the business? And so those OKRs, objectives and key results you mentioned, if you can show that what you're working on aligns with the value that the business is trying to accomplish, that's going to be really strong. And another technique that I found has been helpful is if you provide evidence of what other people are doing. So I've actually looked up the data strategies for the Department of Defense, since I'm in the aerospace and defense industry. And using that and saying, hey, look, this is what our key customer is using for their data strategy, and that's why we should implement X, Y, and Z, or why we should structure this that way. That gives you, more clout, I guess, for lack of a better word, and being able to say, look, I've done the strategic analysis, but I'm not just making it up, right? Like, this is coming from somewhere.
Mm-hmm. That's really powerful. Like, yeah, analyzing the companies you work with, what their data strategy. I love what you said, KK, as far as how you and your team, the data team, sees themselves as a partner with product, especially even in that process of setting metrics or OKRs. I know a lot of product teams out there that wish they had that kind of partnership. So it's great to hear that that's happening at Google. And again, even, tying back to the question of how do we manage the difference of opinion with leadership, again, having powerful data, tying back to the business strategy and objectives, and embracing those data-driven or data-centric practices helps cut through a lot of the noise of opinion by having that in place. So that's fantastic. So cool. All right. I want to move into, talked about communication and a bit about alignment. So this maybe diving a little bit deeper into what you're all talking about, but in your experience, are there, I'll say, other techniques that maybe have been successful for you in aligning the goals and priorities of decision makers with the day-to-day work of data practitioners? So I guess anything you want to expand on there as far as other techniques that have helped you?
I can start with this one. So what I have found has been really effective is you're not just focusing on the strategy or the implementation, but you're really driving a culture. And a culture consists of people, right? So you need to be aware of popular motivations for different people in order to align that with the goals of what you're trying to accomplish. But consistency is key, right? So don't just have a webinar or release a document and say, okay, I'm done, right? You have to continually kind of beat it into the culture in some cases, but also being more informal and approachable. People need to be able to feel that they can have an engaging conversation, that their opinion is being heard. So what I've done as a leader is having weekly open door policies, and people can come to me if they have questions. Well, there's this aspect of the data strategy, I don't see how that applies to me, or this seems kind of nebulous, could you give me some more clarification? Or even just technical questions, like I'm having trouble with this code, or which communication tools should I be using, because everyone seems to be doing something different. So just having that in place where people can engage with the data strategy from you is going to be really important.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I like that, Alicia, you have that forum in your company. I love that. From our end, Tammy and Alicia, what we usually, as data scientists, we usually launch experiments, and we, when the experiment launch, there is this feeling among leaders what's happening, those early results. But usually, in our experiments, what we do is then in such things, we keep lightweight experiment approaches, and such experiments result in positive, the ones that could result in positive lift in the metrics, has shown us a way to invest more in the resources into the project. And we also, whenever we do experiments, we try to summarize the results in a document and so. But what I've tried to now practice is to summarize those results in 5 top bullet points. And what my manager really taught me to further do is to reduce those 5 to 3, to show it to whenever we are sending some results to the leadership, keeping it super simple of what we launched, what we are iterating now on, and what we've learned, and how we are continuously improving the experiment is something that we continuously keep our leadership informed of. And having those frameworks in place where documents are summarized well, or frameworks like POP, purpose outcome process, what was the purpose of this experiment, what is the outcome right now, and what's the process we used. Also keeping them in loop about the assumptions and limitations that we had to face, letting them know about the complexities of experiment setup. I think educating the leadership and managing upwards is equally important while running any data product in the team. And also, when in future, when leaders are proposing something different or a shift, helping them have an understanding of the impact, reach, confidence, and effort using data is equally important in any data team. So I feel As a data team, we've been following such frameworks and practices that really show the impact of experiments as well as drive the direction of the team and the leadership to the positive, most impactful path is something that we've been doing, and we always market ourselves as that. And constant communication back and forth between the leadership, keeping the product teams in the loop, and also keeping the leadership in the loop is what we've been trying to achieve. And also communication is something I feel like it's a learned skill. I'm still learning, but we've been following great leaders like Jeff Bezos or Warren Buffett, and they've been teaching us in business how to really communicate with with leadership as well as peers, sister teams, etc. And I feel like learning those and following those best practices is also very, very helpful.
That's great. I think both of you touched on, I love that we moved even a bit into kind of just talking about culture, right? So, a couple of things, even just what are some of those data-driven behaviors? It's not just having, like Alicia, what you said, where it's a webinar or training, but not really the follow through of like, how do we, have some behaviors or operationalize some things that reinforce or help us to, move beyond foundational knowledge to actually, be more data driven. And then that culture of experimentation. Often I see when I see like data driven cultures or organizations, they're actually more willing to embrace or have that culture of experimentation. But, there's definitely organizations where that's still a learning journey and being, open to being more experimental. So love a lot of what you guys were just saying, what you're both saying there. So, so let me move into maybe talking a bit about, let's see here. This might be a tactic too, but are there specific tools or technologies you found that are helpful in facilitating that communication and alignment across different tiers of the organization?
Well, I'm really hoping KK goes first on this since you're with Google, because I don't want to start with Microsoft product and be like stepping on your toes.
Okay, so I feel like previously I used to think tools as just, like Power BI or Tableau and things like that. But the more I've progressed in my career, I feel like the soft tools like collective ownership, managing the story or narrative around data is very important. Also, identifying potential in the data that we have and being able to say what it is and how to say or how to really pitch about the insights that our team could bring in is very, very important. So the tools that you're talking about, Tammy, I would like to answer it in a different way, where tools like communication and context switching, like when somebody's asking questions, like how do we really understand what's their perspective, and understanding the context behind it. So it's very important to get the alignment on things. Also, I also feel like the format around how we design our recommendations, so the context, the problem, how we did the research, and what is the final recommendation, like how we like gonna go forward with it, what are the pros, what are the cons. Being able to show that analytical thinking and tactical thinking together is a very important tool. And in case where things don't go as we think that they would go, how should this, how should we then take action? So if something goes wrong, like what should the product team do if the hypothesis of the experiment is not correct? What should we do in that case? So being able to communicate that from the data perspective is very important. And at the same time, the most important skill I've learned or tool that I've learned is to keeping it super simple. So yeah, like how we then tackling and how we providing specific use cases to then move forward, learn from here and move forward is the one tool that I've been practicing, and I would like to share with everyone to keep practicing in the data side.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. All
And
right.
I love how you mentioned several tools on the analytics side, like Power BI and Tableau. And I would actually make a point that the tool I have found most useful in terms of implementing or creating a data strategy would be communication tools. So kind of going back to the earlier in the discussion where communication is really lacking, I was working, I consulted in a smaller company, and they were hitting a growth spurt and they needed to scale, but the previous communication tools that they were using, finance was using a tool called Monday.com. Operations was using Microsoft Planner and Project, and then sales was using Trello, and none of them were communicating with each other. So it was really hard to push, a consolidated data environment when everybody was on different communication software. So once we got them talking in the same place and they could find the information that they needed, then we were able to say, okay, we're going to have, data trainings in this place, or we're going to have, webinars or lunch and learns, or we're going to communicate a lot of the data questions in this environment, and you can refer back to it, right? So you have a history of that conversation. But I would say the tool itself, even on the analytical side, is not as important as making sure that everyone is working in the same environment and is using the same tool. So actually, I'm glad you brought up Power BI and Tableau, because at Collins, there were people that were using Power BI and some people were using Tableau, and you had them creating the same data product because they didn't see each other's reports that were being generated. Yeah, I saw the pain on your face there, KK. You feel my pain. Well, the tool, there are so many useful tools out there for whatever you're trying to accomplish. And I would say the number one thing you want to remember is just pick one, make sure everyone's on the same page.
I cannot agree more with you, Alicia. When I started my internship with Southwest Airlines, I was I was in this technical operations maintenance team, and I was tasked to predict the maintenance for aircrafts right before they take off. So while I was doing all that, there was this person in the same team who was tasked to every morning find all the inventory pieces, what's low in the inventory, and specific inventory that's used for the maintenance. And he was they were trying to form the reports and find those red alerts. So when I saw them doing the same thing again and again, I felt like it could be automated, and I simply used spreadsheets tool to help them get all the data in one place and get the formulas in and have that output in their email automatically. It saved them an hour. What I want to really say is, the tool is not that important, but the data is the most powerful tool you have. So rather than focusing on are we using Python or complex stuff, keeping it simple of what solves the problem in hand and getting that outcome quickly is the most important thing. And looking at the data as the tool to form the product strategy is really important. So getting everyone in that mindset in the team is the most powerful thing that we could do.
Yeah, and I really want to tack on to that. The tool itself is not important, but sometimes there's hype around an advanced tool, right? AI is a big buzzword right now. And I have had executives come to me and be like, well, we need to implement, AI or ChatGPT in our company. And I'm looking around like, we don't even have a data strategy. You are not there yet. So kind of pushing back on some of those requests and keeping in mind that the tool that the company needs is probably not going to be the latest and greatest and the most advanced thing. I have had many data governance issues solved by Excel, right? So it doesn't need to be something complex.
Yeah, you both touched on some really important things there. And actually, even just foundationally, is everyone using different tools like what you're saying, Alicia, that already is probably going to show there's a lot of data silos or maybe lots of repetitive data sources and activities. But and then, of course, with a lot of new technologies, I'm sure leaders approaching with the bright, shiny object syndrome of wanting to jump to the latest and greatest and putting the cart before the horse and having that data strategy. So I'm sure a lot of heads were nodding out there as you were both speaking to that last question there. So let's move into some future considerations. So what advice do you either you have for organizations that are seeking to embrace and communicate their data as a product strategies, especially as we talked about, technology is changing so rapidly? Let's start.
Yeah, I can go first. So I feel like data specifically has given me my voice and the confidence to say out the insights to the leadership. It helps me get the executive buy-in. It helps me work and collaborate well with the sister data teams, and how Alicia mentioned, not have the duplicate things. Find the most value projects and work on them. So I feel like data is my buddy, and that single most thing has helped me advance in my career and keep me always interested. So, talking about the strategy around data or the culture, I feel two things are really important. One is the continuous learning mindset in the teams. So, whoever's in the data team, always keeping up with what's going on in the industry, how to keep learning the tools and techniques. So, I'm not opposed to having multiple tools in the organization. Being able to use them and leverage them to the benefit of the organization is equally important. So, learning R, learning Python, learning AI stuff is important so that we can keep up and make recommendations that maybe XYZ can really help. Maybe personalize the recommendations that we have, or this can be used to bring in this product in our team. So making that recommendations for the product enhancement is important, and that can only be done by continuous learning in the team. So fostering that culture in the team is important. And secondly, I feel like experimentation and innovation is very, very important among data teams. So, experimenting on launches, experimenting on what if we change this, what if we change that. Learning that quickly and adapting to changes is very important for all of the teams, and finding paths for innovation by keeping up what's going on in the industry is important. So, you might see me always on LinkedIn, like going through leaders and what are they saying, or what's Amy Vora saying in her blog. I always keep up with those things because I feel it's important to understand what are other leaders things in mind, like what's keeping them up at night, what are the problems that they're trying to solve. It's the tool that have helped me interview during interviews as well, because I'm able to tell what are the metrics that the organization has and what is the north star. I'm able to like predict that by just understanding the description of the team. So I feel like being able to understand the context, form metrics, being able to continuously learn and experiment and innovate among the team, to summarize, is the tool here.
I love what you said about adaptability, KK, and I was going to touch on that as well. It's so key, especially in this field, which is still being defined. And there seems to be constant changes, right? Like just a year ago, we got ChatGPT, and then since then, it seems like there's so many iterations around the products that are available and the strategies that are being developed. So being able to be adaptable and learn, continuous learning is key. But I would add on to that, especially from a leader perspective, is sometimes you just don't have time. Like, especially as you advance in your career, it becomes more important to develop relationships throughout the company and even outside the company if you're benchmarking. So empowering people to perform at their best and to be adaptable and to have that continuous learning professional development opportunity. I feel like that's important, but also the collaboration part of it. So I've actually got my team, we have someone working on database management, and then we have somebody working on reporting and analytics. And what I'm encouraging with my group is that they continue to learn in their areas, but then we have cross training and sharing so that we can all stay, up to date with what our fields are trying to accomplish and anything new that's coming out. I might discover something about data strategy that's going to be useful in the reporting world, or he might discover something in Python or Excel or whatever tool we're using that I need to know about. So having that collaborative environment is really going to help everybody kind of stay up to date, because there's just so much information out there. If I had to do it all myself, I would miss something for sure.
Mhm. That's fantastic. I'm going to try to squeeze in one last quick question here before we start to wrap up. So what should aspiring data strategists focus on to stay on top of the changing data environment? Any last thoughts there?
I would try to focus on who are the big movers in their industry and sort of see what they're doing. Now, Google is a big mover, so you're kind of leading the way. But from when I was with aerospace and defense, right, I wanted to stay in touch with, well, what are other government agencies doing? What is the Department of Defense doing? What are other countries doing? So I was looking at the United Nations data strategy as well. So, pick a few key targets and see how they are implementing data-driven culture or engaging in their community. I actually keep a close eye on Google and Apple is what I can as well, but there's always some information that's coming out that can be relevant to keeping the conversation going and that communication open with your group.
Yeah, huge plus one to that. Google just launched the Gemini AI. It is the most advanced AI that we've launched, and it just launched today. I'm super excited about it, and we've been watching like videos that they have about how it can be used on YouTube. What I would say to aspiring data practitioners is find ways to have a not just a voice but also an opinion in the room. That has helped me in any meetings, being able to be in the present and see where the discussion is going on and like going about and have an opinion on maybe we should not do this. It's okay to not do this, but what I've like learned to have the single most effective way to create that impact is by having an opinion, and forming the opinion can be only done via data in the data world. So basing facts around using data and insights is important. So whichever tool we use to form that data strategy, I know it's important we keep collaboration, we keep in the know of, and if one product can solve multiple things very well, it can be done. But yeah, keeping engaged with the product teams, keeping engaged with the leadership, and always having an opinion on how things should be done is important. And it's okay to fail, but failing fast is also important so we can course correct our things. So that's my 2 cents for the data practitioners, is to keep learning so that way it can help you as a tool to better communicate and keep up with the product teams.
Fantastic. Well, I was trying to furiously take notes here and there as you were all talking. So I know I'm going to be rewatching this session to pick up on all the tips that were shared today. Thank you so much, Alicia and KK, for your words of wisdom on this topic. And Kelsey, this is our last one in the series.
I know, it's so sad. The time goes by so quickly. I just wanted to, I know we're nearly there, but just wanted to take an opportunity to thank the three of you for participating in this way, to thank Pathfinder also for supporting the series entirely. And then also thank you to everyone who was able to join. I think that this was a great way to kind of wrap up the conversations we've had over the last little over a month or so. And did also want to mention we are rolling out another webinar series starting in 2 weeks. We'll have a completely different topic, a completely different set of speakers and supporter and all of that good stuff. So I also have some resources in regards to this particular webinar that I'll be sure to send out, including information on how to access the Pathfinder data as a product study. So everyone stay tuned there. I certainly appreciate your time and efforts and hope everyone enjoys the rest of their Wednesday. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for hosting this.
Thanks for hosting.